Welcome back to another episode of How It Works. My name is Ken Baker from GreenPro Solutions, and today we're going to be talking about tanks. Every spray rig has multiple tanks, and tanks play a very vital role in how your system works. We refer this to as a system because the tanks themselves are part of the integrity of the entire spray rig. They don't only hold product in water. If they're maintained properly, if they're used properly and know how to use them, they can be very helpful in the production and of your day. Now, as you see, these tanks have different variety of sizes of tanks. In this particular unit, these are poly tanks, very durable. They all have breathing caps. Now, if you ever decide to change them, they have to be able to breathe. Why that's important is that when you're taking product out of a tank, similar to a gallon of milk, when you're pouring it and sometimes a gallon of milk collapses because it has no way to air to suck in to let the product out or milk out. This is the same thing. So when you're sucking product out of the tank, it needs to suck air in. So there's actually a breathing apparatus on top of here, the holes that actually take air in. And it's the same with the other way around. If you're putting water or transferring into a tank, it's very important, which most people do. They just take the lid off and allow the air to escape as you're putting product in. Because what will happen is you constantly expand and contract the tank, and it makes the pump work very hard. So when you're filling this tank from another tank, take your lid off, and when you're pulling or sucking from the tank, you can have your lid off, but it's depending how full it is and so it doesn't splash out, put your cap on and let it breathe through that. Each tank here has either two accesses. You have a return, and then you have a suction. What happens is you set your manifold system up, which is in another episode of How It Works, and you're actually pulling from a tank, say a nursing tank. You're going to pull in through the bottom, and it's going to return back into the tank using your manifold. So actually what it does is just circulates within that tank and just keeps it suspended. Now some tanks will have two returns, and the purpose of that is to keep your product suspended. And they're usually at either end of the tank, and it keeps it like what they call a vortex to keep it turning around while you're pumping from it and mixing it. And within this is actually a T on the inside that actually allows the product or the water to swish around the tank and drop. So it constantly pulls from the bottom, brings to the top, and lets it settle on the bottom, so it keeps it very well mixed. Now some of these tanks also, the bigger tanks especially, when you're using granulars like Doggett or Arbor Green, those are very heavy granular products, and they have a tendency of settling to the bottom of the tank. So when you're using systems like this, any tank, the heavier granular need to be suspended. If you leave it for any matter of even a few hours, the product will settle into your suction elbow or bottom of the tank, and it could harden and restrict your system. That is a very, very common problem what people do. They don't rinse it, and they don't clean out their more granular products, and it clogs up your system, and you can't figure out why it doesn't work. So what we do in the process of helping, if you do leave it for an hour or two, that we have what they call turbos. They're brass turbo heads that are put into each end of the tank, and you operate it up here at the manifold, and actually blows high pressure water into your tank to help break up all of that harder matter and granular products that are settled. So depending on what your requirements are, what products you use, it will dictate how we build your tanks. Each of these tanks are drainable. They all go through the manifold system, which eventually comes out your filter. On this particular unit, all we do is take off your filter cap here, turn your valve on, and then go over your manifold and open up the 55-gallon tank, and that will drain out. This case here, it has one already on the bottom here, has its own drain. Some of the bigger tanks will drain by gravity through your suction, back through your filter, and it will drain right out here to keep the mess out of the vehicle. Now, the overall maintenance of these tanks, depending on your product, they will brown. Some of the products are very hard on the internal. The best thing to do is every season maintain it. We don't have any suggestions for product to clean the internal part because it is a very porous product. I wouldn't recommend any harsh chemicals. Basically, just taking a high pressure hose and just cleaning the inside with a compressor or a power washer, and just clean that out best you can and rinse it. Don't use any harsh chemicals. These tanks will expand and contract during the hotter seasons, and that's why there's play here. So when this gets filled up, it will expand out, so that's not loose, it's not going to fall out. Some of the bigger tanks, like you see here, they have these J-hooks. They may need to be tightened every so often because the tanks will expand and contract, and you don't want them bouncing around, so you can just tighten those bolts on that J-hook. We do have, for convenience, the lettering on the front to help tell the volume of what's in the tank, and accordingly that's only going to be helpful when it's transparent and the inside of the tank is kept clean. So these tanks basically overall should last you the life of the vehicle if they're maintained and taken care of properly. As you see here, we have larger tanks. We have a smaller tank, which is another application tank. And again, that's a 55-gallon. This is the 30-gallon. And this is basically very universal, so we can use this particular vehicle and say you may have a smaller application, one job to do just that one product. You may have one that needs 56 gallons, and you may need one that only has 15 gallons or 5 gallons. Or you may have one that you need 250 gallons or 150 gallons. So it's a very diversified system in how you use your tanks. And again, this manifold system we talked about in one of our other episodes of how to use manifolds can distribute all your product between all these tanks. These are linked together, and you can take from the big nursing tank and transfer to the 56. You can transfer from the 56 into another tank if you'd like to. Say if you needed 100 gallons, you can make two tanks of this and transfer it into the 110 over there. So by using this manifold system, very universal, very easy to use, in no time at all, you're in service on your job, producing and satisfying your customers. So thank you again for joining us for another episode of How It Works.